The so-called HOA police thought they had control. They came marching down the quiet suburban street, puffed up with authority they didn't really have, ready to make an example out of one man. But in seconds, they realized they had cornered the wrong man. Imagine this scene for a moment, a warm afternoon. Sunlight dripping across driveways, kids riding bikes just a few houses down, and yet tension was crackling in the air. Three men in dark polo shirts, armed with clipboards and cheap walkie-talkies, strode through the neighborhood like they owned it. They weren't police. They weren't city officials, but they acted like they were. Their jackets even had the words HOA Security Division stitched across the chest in bold letters. To an outsider, it might have looked official. To the untrained eye, they seemed legitimate. But it was all an Act-10 ugly performance meant to intimidate. At the end of the street, their target stood calmly on his porch. A tall black man, broad-shouldered, steady, and unflinching. He didn't speak at first. He didn't even move when they approached. He just watched them. And right there before a single word was exchanged, you could feel something was off. Because this wasn't a man who looked afraid. Now here's where the lesson begins. Most homeowners, when confronted by aggressive HOA enforcers, freeze. They stumble, they apologize, they scramble to fix whatever rule they've supposedly broken. But fear is exactly what fake authority feeds on. The moment you show it, they've already won. The first thing you must remember when arguing with an HOA, real or fake, is this. Never let them see you flinch. The lead officer stepped forward, his voice sharp and rehearsed. Sir, you're in violation of multiple HOA codes. You need to come with us for questioning. Think about that word. These weren't real police, but they used language designed to trigger fear, to make a homeowner feel powerless. This is tactic number 1. Overwhelm you with official-sounding nonsense. The man on the porch finally spoke. His voice was calm, almost too calm. On what authority? That simple question shifted the air. Because authority isn't about uniforms, clipboards, or walkie-talkies. Authority is about law. And when you're facing an HOA, this is the most powerful tool you have, knowing the limits of their power. They can send letters. They can fine you. They can escalate legally. But they cannot arrest you. They cannot detain you. And they certainly cannot demand you leave your property. The so-called HOA police weren't expecting resistance. They doubled down, voices raised, trying to sound even more commanding. You're obstructing HOA enforcement? If you don't comply, we'll have to escalate. Do you understand? Now let me pause here and talk to you directly. This is tactic number 2, escalation through intimidation. They throw words like comply, escalate, and enforcement at you, hoping you don't realize they're empty. And if you don't know your rights, you'll cave. But here's the truth. Knowledge dismantles intimidation. The man on the porch tilted his head just slightly. A faint smile crept across his face. He still hadn't moved. He still hadn't raised his voice. But suddenly, you could sense the balance of power tilting. He knew something they didn't. He knew who he was. Gentlemen, he said slowly, before you take another step onto this porch, I need you to tell me exactly what law you think you're enforcing. That silence afterward, it was heavy. It was suffocating. The fake HOA police exchanged glances. Their confidence cracked, just slightly. Because when you force intimidation to meet truth, intimidation collapses. But they weren't ready to back down. They'd come too far. One of them stepped forward aggressively, jabbing a finger in the air. You think this is a joke? We're authorized by the HOA board. That means we have the same rights as local enforcement. You don't get to question us. And right there, that's tactic number 3, false equivalence. They try to blur the line between HOA rules and actual law enforcement. They bank on the fact that most people don't know the difference. But here's the reality. HOA rules are not laws. They're agreements, contracts tied to property ownership, and the moment they overstep, you have every right to push back. The man's eyes hardened. He finally stepped off the porch, closing the space between them. He didn't tower over them just in size, he towered in presence. And with every word, his calmness was a weapon. You are not law enforcement. You have no right to step foot on this property without my consent. And if you try, you'll regret it. For a moment, the street went still. Even the kids had stopped their bikes, watching from down the block. Neighbors peeked through curtains, holding their breath. And here's where the story twists. Because what the HOA officers didn't know was that this wasn't just any homeowner. He wasn't just a man standing his ground with knowledge of HOA overreach. He was something far more dangerous. He was the one man they should never have tried to corner. But the beauty of this moment isn't just who he was, it's how he handled it. He didn't shout. He didn't swing fists. He didn't threaten with empty words. He stood firm, calm, unflinching. And this is the takeaway for anyone watching. Power isn't about yelling louder. Power is about knowing the truth, standing your ground, and refusing to be shaken. The lead officer sneered, trying one last desperate tactic. Sir, you're resisting HOA authority. This can end badly for you. The man leaned in, his voice dropping just enough for only them to hear. No, this ends badly for you. It was in that instant, the flicker of fear in their eyes, that the truth began to sink in. They hadn't cornered a victim. They'd cornered a storm, and right there I want you to pause and ask yourself, what would you do in this situation? Would you freeze? Would you argue blindly? Or would you stand tall, calm, and informed? Because at the end of the day, that's what protects you, not bravado, but clarity. This wasn't just a fight between a homeowner and a fraudulent HOA squad. This was a clash between illusion and reality, between fear and truth. And the truth was about to win. Before I close, let me give you the core lesson hidden inside this story. Never be intimidated by titles or uniforms. They don't define authority, law does. Ask the right questions. On what authority? And what law are you enforcing? Force pretenders to expose their weakness. Stay calm. Fear fuels their control. Calm dismantles it. Know the limits. An HOA can fine you. They can sue. But they cannot detain, arrest, or enforce criminal law. Now listen, if you've ever dealt with an HOA, you know how quickly they twist power? Maybe they've fined you for the color of your fence. Maybe they've harassed you over your yard. Or maybe they've tried to bully you into silence. This story isn't just entertainment, it's a mirror. It's showing you what happens when you know your worth and refuse to bow. And if you're watching this right now, I want you to take something bigger away. Your voice matters. Your rights matter. And no HOA, no fake authority, no intimidation can take that from you. So don't just listen, act. Share this video with someone who feels powerless against their. Subscribe so you never miss the stories that show you how to stand up. And above all, stay till the end. Because what comes next will change how you see confrontations forever. The street was still. The air carried a silence so thick, it pressed down on everyone watching. 3 men in fake uniforms, puffed up with arrogance, were now standing in front of someone they could neither intimidate nor control. And the worst part? They didn't even know it yet. They thought this was just another homeowner, another neighbor to scare, to bully, to drag into submission. But this wasn't another neighbor. This wasn't another target. This was the man they should never have cornered. The lead officer clenched his fists, desperate to regain control. His voice rose, echoing through the cul-de-sac. Sir, this is your last chance to comply. If you refuse, we'll call for backup. Backup. Another empty word. Another hollow threat. But it was meant to rattle. Because when an HOA can't control you with fines, they'll control you with fear. And when fear doesn't work, they invent the illusion of bigger weapons. The man, calm, steady, almost unshakable, took a slow step forward. His shadow fell across the trio like a warning.
Oh, whoever you want.
But no, this one real. Law enforcement shows up. You'll have to explain why you pretended to be them. And right there, something cracked. For the first time, the fake HOA police faltered. The neighbors watching could see it, the twitch in their eyes, the tightening of their jaws. Confidence was slipping. Here's where the second big lesson comes in. Always push intimidation back onto the intimidator. Don't let their threats sit on your shoulders. Hand those threats back and make them carry the weight. One of the men blurted out, louder than he probably meant to. "You don't know who you're dealing with?" The homeowner smiled. A slow, dangerous smile. "Neither do you." That was the pivot. The first seed of doubt planted in their minds, because truth has a way of seeping through silence. And in that moment, every neighbor watching from behind blinds and windows began to realize this man wasn't afraid because he had nothing to fear. The fake officers shifted, uneasy. The lead one jabbed a finger again. "You're obstructing HOA law. We can charge you fine. You even evict you if we want." Eviction. Another scare tactic. Another distortion of truth. Let me pause and speak to you here. An HOA cannot simply evict you. They don't have that power. Yes, they can fine you. Yes, they can sue you. But eviction requires a court, a legal process, and actual grounds. If anyone tells you otherwise, they're bluffing. And like every bluff, it crumbles when you call it. The man on the porch finally broke the stillness completely. His voice carried not just to the imposters, but to every hidden ear in the neighborhood. "You've lied, you've threatened, you've trespassed, and now you've crossed the line. You wanted control, but control belongs to the one who knows the law." He reached into his jacket, not fast, not aggressive, but deliberate. The fake HOA police stiffened, bracing for something they couldn't name. When his hand came back out, it wasn't a weapon. It was a badge, not just any badge. Silver crest that carried more weight than any uniform they could have stitched together. The letters across it gleamed in the sun. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Neighbors gasped. Even the kids on their bikes froze. The imposters, their faces drained of color? In that instant, their false authority evaporated. Because now the balance wasn't just tipped, it was obliterated. "You came here pretending to be law enforcement," the man said, holding the badge steady. "But I am law enforcement, and not the kind you want to test." The silence shattered. Every ounce of arrogance they'd carried melted into panic. Their walkie-talkies seemed useless, their jackets ridiculous, their threats pathetic. They hadn't cornered a victim, they had cornered an FBI agent. Now, here's the real value of this reveal. This isn't just about his identity. This is about what it represents. When you stand up to false authority, when you call it out, you strip it bare. And that's something you can do even without a badge. You do it with knowledge, composure, and truth. One of the imposters stammered. "Whoa, we didn't know the agent cut him off, sharp as steel. That's the problem. You thought you could intimidate anyone. You thought the uniform made you untouchable. But intimidation only works on the weak. I'm not weak." His words carried weight. Not just to them, but to every viewer hearing this now. Because too often we give power to people who don't deserve it. We bend when we don't have to. We bow when we should stand. The imposters began to back away, stumbling over their excuses. We were just following orders from the HOA board. Then the board will answer too," the agent snapped, his eyes cut like blades. "Impersonating law enforcement is a crime. Trespassing is a crime. And intimidation is a crime. You thought you could weaponize fear, but now fear is coming for you." And here's where the story turns from defense to offense, because this wasn't just about protecting his property. It was about holding abusers accountable. That's the final lesson for you. Don't just resist, document, expose, and act. If your HOA crosses the line, don't just argue, record it, gather evidence. Use the law they claim to represent. Because when you shine light on abuse, abuse crumbles. The imposters, once towering with false authority, were now shrinking men, cornered by truth. They muttered excuses, tried to retreat, but every step backward was a reminder of their collapse. The FBI agent didn't chase. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. His badge was enough. His calm was enough. In the neighborhood, for the first time, it wasn't silent from fear. It was silent in awe. The man they thought was just another homeowner had shown them what real strength looked like, not in fists or shouting, but in truth that doesn't bend. The imposters scurried away, their fake uniforms hanging heavy, their arrogance stripped bare. And as they disappeared down the street, the agent turned back to his porch, his voice carrying one last time. "Never let anyone convince you they have power. They don't. Not here. Not anywhere. Now let me turn to you. If you've been bullied by an HOA, if you've been made to feel powerless in your own home, hear this. you are not powerless. Knowledge is your weapon, calm is your shield, and the lawyer will lose on your side. Here are the takeaways you must never forget. Impersonation is illegal. Anyone pretends to be law enforcement, call them out and report them. HOA power is limited. They can fine, they can sue, but they cannot arrest, detain, or evict you without court approval. Stand calm, not loud. Calmness shakes bullies more than shouting ever will. Document everything. Evidence wins battles, not emotions. So what did the imposters learn that day? That fake power collapses in the face of real truth? What should you learn? That you don't have to be an FBI agent to stand strong. You just have to know your rights and refuse to bow. And now, my message to you. If this story gave you clarity, if it gave you strength, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone you know is battling an HOA. Let them see that intimidation is fragile. And if you're ready for more stories that teach, inspire, and reveal the truths, subscribe. Join this community, because here, we don't bow to bullies, we expose them. Most importantly, remember this. Power doesn't come from uniforms. It doesn't come from fines. It doesn't even come from badges. Power comes from truth. And truth, when you stand with it, makes you untouchable. So stay strong, stay informed, and never let anyone, HOA or otherwise, convince you that you're smaller than you are.